Hello and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today I bring you my August 2020 Senate election prediction. Yes, I'm back after basically a month of disappearing. Sorry about that, I had a little bit of personal issues. But for the future, to keep you updated, I have now created a Twitter at One Man Think Tan 1. So One Man Think Tank, but replace the K with a 1, because you should always double check your spelling when creating a Twitter URL. There will also be a link down in the description below. But today we have our 2020 map as I have set it up for the safe seats. Now, Arizona, Colorado, and Alabama are likely seats because they would be flips from incumbents. I am never comfortable saying an incumbent flipping to a challenger is a safe seat. It's just a personal dislike of mine because incumbents, you never know what's going to happen the day before Election Day, can always make a comeback. So you should never count an incumbent out. You never know what goodwill they can suddenly bank. But this is roughly where we're at. Democrats at 48 seats, Republicans at 41, 11 seats for toss-up. Overall looking good for the Democrats here, but once we start narrowing things down, it's going to get a little bit more intense, especially as things have changed over the past month. Primaries have been completed, polls released, and now we're seeing what is probably a clearer view of the map. First off, good news for Republicans. Kentucky is going from a likely to a safe seat. Last time I was already feeling nervous about Amy McGrath, the Democratic challenger, and now I think she has buried her campaign. Mitch McConnell is highly unlikely to lose, especially with the gap between him and her. An example would be Michigan. The Democrats are passing up an amazing chance to take out Kentucky, or flip Kentucky, and have just tossed this entire chance out the window. Same with Michigan. If they ran a theoretically strong incumbent or challenger against a decent to surprisingly strong incumbent, and the challenger turned out to be a lot more hot water than expected. But that's one up for the Republicans, so their seat count actually is 42 this time around. The answer to life, the universe, and everything. But continuing on, are there any more likely seats? Well, I do have a few. Let's put a few up on the board for the Republicans, starting with Texas. Yes, I know, Texas is looking a lot better in the presidential election than it is looking in the Senate election right now for the Democrats, and people are mistaking Joe Biden doing well as a mistake for the Democrats doing well overall. The Senate race is a lot less competitive. It's competitive still, it's a likely seat. If a state is likely, it means the opposing party can win. It's just not very likely for them. Joe Biden is doing well in the presidential elections, and that will be represented in the presidential election map. And most likely, the good job that's being done by Joe Biden in the presidential election will trickle down to the state house. I don't think it's enough to save the Senate campaign, due to the fact John Cornyn has managed, despite being tainted by the Trump brand, to essentially come across as milk. No one really has an opinion on milk. And when someone comes along and says, I'm the new super drink, people typically go, yeah, but are you better than milk? I like milk. Milk's not bad. So I'm just going to stick with milk. Meanwhile, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump is water versus raw sewage. A little bit of a different reaction. But a likely seat for the Republicans. Another likely seat is Alaska. We've gotten a little bit more polling out of Alaska, and it is looking like the incumbent Sullivan is not doing as well as he should be doing in Alaska, but nothing that's going to probably cost him his seat. Alaska has a very libertarian bend, and he has not been doing a good job of meeting up that leave us alone, we're Alaska libertarian bend. And down in Georgia, the special election is a likely seat, due to the fact that, at this point, I am genuinely wondering if the runoff will be between two Republicans, at which point it's a safe Republican seat. The Democrats had a perfect opportunity here and, much like Kentucky, have completely squandered it. I understand kind of why they squandered it. They've got 3 personalities in the race, none of which who seem to be willing to drop out. The guy who the party endorsed is not doing much to really garner support around him. He hasn't negotiated with any of his opponents to consolidate the Democratic vote, and no one from the leadership has come down, at least as it seems, to tell the main opposition, Lieberman, to get out of the race after he had a string of good polling. Now the Democrats may be willing to lose the Georgia special election in order to avoid inter-party conflict in Georgia. And, of course, South Carolina. South Carolina with Lindsey Graham is a likely seat for the Republicans. Nothing that I would have expected to actually happen back when this race started. But his opponent, Jamie Harrelson, is polling really well. And this is really well for a challenger in South Carolina, to the extent he's tied Graham in some polls. That, unlike Kentucky, where it's a clear and away Mitch McConnell wins every one, the fact there are still some polls which show Harrison tying Graham and Graham's numbers steadily declining, even if I don't think it'll be enough for him to be in any danger zone on Election Day, means South Carolina is a likely seat. Speaking of likely, let's finally give one to the Democrats in the form of North Carolina. North Carolina is a likely seat now, in my opinion, for one main reason. You are not an incumbent who loses in this many polls outside of the margin of error and get to in any way pretend like this is going to be a close race. He could still win. It's likely for a reason, and not likely safe like Colorado or Arizona. I mean likely. You do not get to poll like that. You do not get to show up and say, "Ooh, I'm Tom Tillis, vote for me. I could still win this seat," when you have consistently polled badly, and in the regular poll, in good pollsters too. We haven't gotten a Quinnipiac out there yet, but like a Monmouth, we've had CBS. We might have not had Monmouth. I don't think we had Monmouth, but we have had CBS News. Public policy polling has overall been decent, if a little bit Democratic bias. I do account for that, but all of these who have done YouGov, we've been seeing regular Marist have given out regular polling numbers that show the state getting more blue. I think North Carolina's Senate race is becoming less competitive in favor of the Democrats. Which leaves us with our actual 4 toss-up seats. 11 is the stretch of what seats are actually at play, folks. These are the 5 seats which will decide the election. So, good news if you're a Democrat, you've already had 2 pickups. So you only need to win one of these 5. Bad news if you're a Republican, you have to hold all 5, and you do not have a good time in most of these. Let's start with Iowa. After the completion of their primary, Joni Ernst saw her numbers drop. But she has had a recent uptick in good polling, and her opponent, Greenfield, who did poll ahead of her for a while, only ever polled in the margin of error. With that being said, I'm moving this to a leans Republican right now. I think there was a big swoop up in the Democratic vote, and now it's flipping back over to the Republicans, with the undecideds breaking towards the Republican Party. So Iowa is a lean seat right now. Okay, the fun one, Kansas. Kansas just had their primary. Kobach lost. And so many people went, "Oh, it's over. Oh, it's over. It's safe Republican. No one could ever imagine the Democrat winning here." I think her name is Barbara Boiler. "No one can imagine her winning. It's over. It's all over. It's a wash, folks. Wipe it off." But Marshall's not polling well either, and I get a little bit annoyed when I hear this narrative of Kansas isn't competitive because there's no Kobach. If Kobach was up, I think it would be a guaranteed flip, and that's what people were looking for. But with Marshall, this is also a likely seat, a leans Republican seat. The Democrats have a solid chance of being able to pick up Kansas, because Marshall is not a strong candidate. Being better than Chris Kobach is being the, let me think of a good analogy. The garbage burger next to the shit sandwich. You'd take the garbage burger over the shit sandwich, but it's still a garbage burger. He has the magical R, which usually saves him in these states, especially these more long-standing Republican ones. Even as the Democrats begin to eat into the South. I need to make a more proper video on that. But He is by no means out of the woods yet. He needs to have some good polling numbers and strong campaigning in order for me to consider him in any way out of the woods here. Montana. It's Safe Steve in Montana. Steve Daines versus Steve Bullock. Steve Bullock being the former governor and the Democrat. And in the past two, or maybe even three, I've said it is leans or tilt Democratic because Steve Bullock is polling well. Steve Bullock ain't polling so well anymore. He's keeping the exact same numbers he had in the previous polls, but his Republican opponent has had a spike, and we've gotten some more, what I will loosely term as higher quality polling from groups like Quinnipiac. Not higher quality, that's mean and incorrect, frankly. This makes the other ones sound like they don't do a good job. More vetted polling. Groups that have been polling for longer and wider arrays. So we're talking Quinnipiac groups that can account more for bias in. And in total honesty, that has made me flip Montana to a tilt Republican seat. I still think Steve Bullock is going to turn this around or to make this race very competitive. It's already competitive. I think he's going to turn it around to make it even more competitive as Election Day comes up. He would have not put his hat in the ring if he was convinced he was going to lose. I genuinely believe that. He wouldn't have made that call. It's actually why I think Pompeo didn't run in Kansas. I think he did his internals, he did his checks, and saw, I'm not going to win this one. In Montana, I think Steve Bullock did the same thing, and he got some good internals. And we are still 3 months out from Election Day, which makes me say Montana, tilt Republican right now, but we could very easily see it flip on Election Day. So we need to break this. So right now we're looking like we could be head for a tie or a slim victory of one of the two parties. What will Georgia's main election say? Well, Georgia's main election says this is leans Republican. Weirdly enough, the main election and the special election have flip sides. One was previously the nail biter, and that was the special election. Oh, the incumbent's looking real weak and the challenger's looking real strong. And now that's moved over to the main election. Purdue versus Ossoff. Ossoff has the name recognition, the Atlanta support, while his opponent, Purdue, the incumbent, it has good name recognition in the state, but has been really hampered by coronavirus, Trump's response, and frankly how the governor of the state has been acting, and that is really dragging him down. The one advantage the Republicans have in the special election is their main candidate is most likely not going to be Laweffer. It's going to be someone who, to the people of Georgia, is a new variable in the Senate. He's not tied up in any of this mess. So right now it's leans. I could see Ossoff mounting a solid campaign and making this even tighter. I could see next month, this completely dissipates and goes strong Republican. So watch Georgia. It's the most volatile out of all of these races. Iowa and Kansas, they're probably going to stay the same. Montana is going to flip between slight edge to Steve, slight edge to Steve, slight edge to Steve, back and forth. Well, Georgia, that's going to be volatile. That's going to be ranging between likely and tilt, or even flipping. So just keep that in mind. So it all comes down to Maine. Susan Collins, who is going to control the Senate, assuming Donald Trump loses the presidency? It'll be the Democrats. If we assume he wins, it would be the Republicans. It is the Democrats with a lean. Susan Collins is not polling well. Her opponent is polling higher than she is. Susan Collins' approval is tanking in the state. I believe the challenger's name is Gideon. And they are polling better and better, and Susan Collins is falling further and further away from the margin of error. I think the Democrats' biggest advantage here in this map is the fact that their weakest state they're going to pick up is Maine right now. I was not believing I was going to say that. They went from not having a path to having a really simple path. They just need to pick up one state. The fact the Democrats' weakest state is a leans state that is heading more towards likely, while the Republicans is Montana, which is going to be incredibly competitive, says where this map is. This is a 50-50. This goes down to the presidency, Senate, but in practice, this is a very favorable map for the Democrats. Republicans should not be doing this poorly. Arizona and North Carolina should be a lot more competitive. Michigan should be competitive. South Carolina shouldn't be in question. Maine should be so much more competitive. Montana is about where I would have expected it, but I cannot express my surprise at this map. And if you're a Democrat, you should feel really good about the Senate right now. You shouldn't feel secure about it, but you should feel really good. And with that all being said, if you like the video, please leave a like down below, as well as a comment. I always like hearing your guys' opinions. If you want to see more from the channel, click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you're alerted when new content comes out. And I now have a Twitter. I'm not used to saying that. At OneManThinkTan1. 1 replacing the K. So, as always, have a wonderful day.